Right then, hello and welcome to another episode of Sparks the Conversation. I'm back with the boy, the co-host, Rowan. He is back.
Yeah.
I sacked him for a week to have a guest on, but we are back today and we are going to be talking all things festive, all things seasonal greetings, and all of the tensions that come around this period for lifters like us, and hopefully give you some advice / actionable take homes that you'll be able to kind of quote unquote manage. If you're listening and you don't have video for that, I just air quoted, manage the festive period. So let's do a little update on Rowan first, because obviously a week without him. I know you've missed him just as much as I have. So how are things with you, mate?
Who wouldn't? All good, thank you, sir. Still just chugging along through the masters. Got a couple of courseworks due in next week and the following. All going well.
What are your coursework
training? So the first is a lab report to do with kind of the use of a warm-up. So like a high intensity warm-up prior to exercise, and albeit this is more endurance based, just how that can have a, in theory, positive effect on performance. Spoiler, our study, because it was done on university students, was awful and we found nothing. So
classic. Worth the money.
Oh, of course, easy. That's £11,500, definitely well spent.
Well spent, yeah.
And then the second one is just a review on training with low carbohydrates. So
training low, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so either not eating before you train, having a low carbohydrate diet.
Hashtag don't do keto. How's training going? Because I know you just come off, 2 weeks ago you were deloading, right? And now was your first week back last week?
I think second week back now.
Right.
Or third.
Right, well, I'm way off anyway, so don't listen to me. How's it going?
It's good. So I decided to not rerun the increase in volume throughout the meso, just because while I was finding I could physically recover from it, my productivity in the rest of the day was much lower. And when it came to trying to write courseworks, etc., sitting there in front of my laptop trying to read a 14, 15-page journal article, words just weren't going in. So I've increased volume for some body parts above baseline, where I feel like they could do with the additional kind of attention to grow. But outside of that, it's mainly just now flat volume, trying to progress through load, reps, form, anything like that, really.
Nice. Yeah. Interesting that you kind of felt that. Like, I must admit, like, I deloaded last week and I was pretty beaten up because I increased volume just like you did, just for 1 week, because obviously I was probably in no place to do so, but I wanted to trial it. I enjoyed it because I feel like my rep accuracy is off a little bit at the moment. So by increasing that volume, I'm getting more opportunity to get a good stimulus. And like, it's the first time for a while I've actually felt any form of DOMS. I don't know whether that's just because of kind of prep, and I can't remember what life was like before prep, but it did feel good. So I'm going to run it again. Obviously, I prioritize all of my kind of brain work in the mornings. So like maybe you could have a look at some productivity tips from me, and how you could arrange your day. But like, I structure it so after training, all I have to do is kind of either beef out content or kind of edit photos or podcasts. So like, I didn't necessarily feel as kind of affected by that as you might have, because obviously you're trying to do a master's and I'm just trying to edit a photo for Instagram. So slightly different.
Both is hard of each other.
Exactly, mate. Yeah, I've got a tough life. Leave it out. So yeah, that's a little update on me. Like, I've just come off a deload. Like I was just saying to Rowan off air, like I hate deloading. Like, and the worst thing is I know how essential it is to a natural, or to anyone trying to grow muscle, but I just hate it. Like, I need that outlet within my day, within my week, because I took more days off than trained in this deload, because I thought I needed it following prep, because obviously my last, well, not obviously, but my last quote unquote air quoted deload, I was in Ibiza, and I was still pretty stressed from kind of prep, and kind of my IBS issues. So I wouldn't necessarily class that as a deload as such. I'd kind of call that a ramp up in cortisol, because what I needed to do was actually just be at home and not be abroad, so I could have like usual food, usual gym structure. But that wasn't the case, because you know me, just love Ibiza sometimes. But it rained, yeah, good. Yeah, I'm first week back, and just like you are, I'm at like baseline volume, and I'm just going to run double progression until kind of it stalls. And by double progression, I mean basically what Rowan says, like linear progression of what I'm lifting or reps with the weight I lifted the previous week. And once that runway has stalled, because it probably inevitably will, I'll just add a set here and there. But I'm going to be very meticulous with where I add those sets. I'm not just going to add them like systemically across every muscle group, because I think kind of still fatigued in my legs from prep, which is probably something I need to get checked out. But like legs probably don't need that much work. They will obviously, my legs just grow, so like I could probably look at a squat and they'll grow. Whereas I probably get better off. Yeah, but you've got big arms, so it's fine. And then I'll just prioritize that volume elsewhere, and I am quite enjoying it. The only downside, like we said before, is it takes ages in the gym. Especially if like it's a deadlift day and you've got to do 3 sets of deadlifts. It takes me about 20 minutes to warm up for deadlifts, and then I'm resting in between. So it's like an hour, and I've just done deadlifts.
You're literally a powerlifter now.
I am just an absolute meathead. Next, I'll start smelling. Right. So let's get into it. So obviously, today, the day of the pod, is November the 29th. So if you are in the UK, which based on the analytics of the podcast, everyone is. So hello. It's got pretty Christmassy pretty quick. It's freezing. There's advertising everywhere. There's snow in some parts of the country, i.e. where Rowan is.
Don't get me started.
It's nice and warm down in the south. But the festive period for a lot of people, a lot of meatheads, a lot of people trying to achieve something with their fitness can be seen or perceived as a bit of a kind of hurdling block or a increased amount of friction towards those goals. And the main reason for that is you're probably super busy. Social occasions go up because kind of everyone's drinking mulled wine, stuff like that. And food is just abundant. Food that you would never eat any other time of the year suddenly just come out at random points of the day and are now acceptable. Like a cheese board at 10 a.m. Like that, they start coming out in November. I know they do because my parents do it. So unless you've got like the willpower of me, who on prep went into a sweet shop to smell the sweets and just stood there and looked at them and then walked out, it can become a bit of a problem. So like we're going to talk about how we'd approach training, how we'd approach nutrition, and kind of just lifestyle things. There's a few kind of quote unquote hacks that you can use or utilize, which is a very common word at the moment by morons, to kind of manage the period. But in terms of training, what would you be thinking, buddy, in terms of a client?
So I guess it will just depend on what fits into their schedule. Do they want to train during the period? Do they have access to a gym during that period? I think it's them first clearing up what they have access to in terms of time and facilities. If there's someone that says, I want to train all the way through, then potentially their gym may be shut a few of the days.
Yeah, or check the opening hours, because some gyms are absolutely ridiculous with that. They'll be like, "Oh, we're only here for 2 hours. Brilliant, thanks for that."
We're open 6:30 until 2.
Yeah, and then you get there at 1. You've had your pre-workout, and your day is ruined. But yeah, I'd agree. I think like there needs to be a conversation with the client, or if you're coaching yourself, just assess whether you want to train all over Christmas. Personally, and I know a lot of my clients. And Rowan's clients would probably want to train and will train over Christmas because, like I said, if I don't train, I'm probably horrible to be around. So that doesn't lend itself to a good Christmas with family. If I'm like a caged
Your
bull.
train doesn't change that massively with you, though, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm just me, aren't I? Anyway, my parents can suffer with that. So I would be like, if it's business as usual, it's business as usual. Just adapt your day around the social occasions. Like, I'd probably be suggesting like don't train on Christmas Day. Like, there's more to life potentially, but if you really love it that much and like you've got a 24-hour gym and it's like a social thing where you're meeting up with your friends on Christmas Day, like who am I to say like don't do it? Like just crack on. I know I'm going to like a social event at the gym. I'm training at the moment on Christmas Eve. It's like a mock powerlifting meet. I'm not competing, but I've got a client competing there. So I'll be going down, might even dress up. So like I think with training, it's like whatever you want to do, and basically do it. For some of my more general population clients who kind of perceive Christmas as like a downtime period, I would potentially be looking at planning in, like I have done, a deload over that period. So we'd probably be extending this mesocycle a little bit longer than we normally would, because a lot of them are kind of fatigued now. But if we deload now, they've only got kind of a 3, 4, 5 week block until the next deload. So I often ask them, like, what do you want to do? Do you kind of want to deload now and then deload at Christmas as well? Or do you want to keep going, eke out as much progress as we can, and really kind of drive the adaptation / progression and then get that deload over Christmas? Or do you want to have those deloads? And they very often, well, most of them have said kind of push on till Christmas, which I think is a good approach, because then it takes the pressure off you a little bit. Like, my family is kind of not necessarily the most festive. So our Christmas Day and Christmas days around Christmas Day, good sentence, aren't very kind of like social. We're not going to other families. We're just kind of keeping ourselves to ourselves. But I know for some families, and some of my clients' families, it's like a big thing, isn't it? Like Christmas can become like quite a stressful thing. You're traveling to different places, lots of social occasions. So removing that need to train and almost legitimizing it by saying like, you've trained really hard over this last 8, 9, 10 weeks, and here's this time for you to rest and recover. From a training standpoint, I think would be stand them in really good stead going into the new year, because normally time away from the gym and deloading will make you want to go to the gym. Motivation will be quite high if you're in a good place with training before the deload. I think training's the easier one to talk about Christmas, because it's like you train or you don't. Like, that's the crack. You could also think about there is like a middle ground where you could just go to like full body 3 times a week if you know you're going to be able to like train 3 times across a week or 2 weeks, and you still want to get some form of activity in. But again, it completely depends where you are in your phase. Like, if you're at the end of a mesocycle and your fatigue's really high, is there any benefit to really doing like 3 full bodies a week? Potentially not. You'd probably be better off just kind of taking that week off as a deload, and planning it in. And so the main take home from that is like plan. Like, a lot of my guys and girls, I was talking about Christmas deload in October. I was that guy bringing up Christmas in October, because like I said, we want to be kind of thinking about these things, so when they come, it's not like this massive surprise, like, oh god, Christmas is like 4 weeks away, and our kind of like training alignments all mucked up. But that's probably just my autism coming through there.
I think it's quite a good way to proceed into things, to be fair. Like, if you're suddenly aware of the week before Christmas that they still want to train and gyms are shut, you've then got a frantic rush to try and fit in what you can around it. Especially with the different gyms will stay open for different periods. Like, at least one of the gyms I've worked at back home is shut at least Christmas Day, Boxing Day. I don't know if it's open the 27th, but then there are other bodybuilding gyms nearby that I know open for a couple of hours on Christmas Day, because I have been that guy to go train late.
Yeah, and people love it. Like, and for some people who like don't have, like, sounds dark, but like don't have family close or live on their own, like environments like that are their social networks. So why wouldn't they open up and like you get to see your mates, like when potentially you'd spend Christmas Day on your own and not necessarily see someone. And I'm like all for that 100%. So that's training wrapped up. From a nutrition standpoint, it's a little bit more tricky because some of my clients are dieting over Christmas. Most of them aren't. But again, that all relates to like what you're wanting to try and achieve. Because obviously, if the goal overall is fat loss, you should probably try and still be in a calorie deficit for the majority of the festive period. The key emphasis there being on the majority, because we don't need to be in a calorie deficit every day to create fat loss, which is a big take home. Another thing is like it is very easy for one day or certain things to really kind of escalate out of control around Christmas. Like I said at the start, like just the abundance of food and the acceptance of eating food, which I'm all for. We need to be able to auto-regulate ourselves and be mindful that food is just food and we're making the decision to diet at the end of the day. But where it's tricky as a coach is like when you see people kind of self-sabotage, and you're like, I know you want this really bad. I know you want to kind of lose this fat really bad, but you're just kind of letting yourself off the hook. So in terms of the Christmas period, I think a lot of my guys and girls will be on diet breaks if they are dieting. This won't be a complete week off from dieting. There'll potentially be some calorie manipulation within that week. So, for example, if I'm estimating that they're going to be on Christmas Day and potentially Boxing Day eating, I don't know, for a lad, it could be upwards of like 8,000 calories. For a female, it could also be that high. I'd be looking at potentially kind of increasing calories across the week compared to their dieting calories, so we can reduce a little bit of diet fatigue, but not so much that they're above maintenance, and not so much that added to the calories that I expect them to eat on Christmas Day and Boxing Day whacks them way above their calories. Because of course it wouldn't be a diet break if they weren't kind of away from the calorie deficit. So it's a tricky one. Again, it's completely client dependent. So you'd then be trying to kind of factor in those days that they're going to have with Christmas, because it is kind of just if the numbers match and if the numbers work, they can work in your favor. I don't know what you'd say about that.
Yeah, so if I would probably recommend, if you're in a position to implement some sort of diet break or a maintenance phase for that kind of week period, just because there are going to be so many more temptations. And I think if you're able to stay on your diet, focus on that, that's your goal, power to you. But definitely for some people, if they are trying to diet and then they have family members constantly offering them sweets, chocolate, whatever, once they have one, they then may kind of spiral out of control. So manipulating calories, so as long as across the week it kind of averages out to being at maintenance, not above into a surplus, you could run the 2 days before Christmas lower. There's a Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day being higher, almost in like a kind of wave, and then slowly back down, tapering out at the end of the week.
Yeah, so that's how I'm going to approach it, like personally, because I'm still kind of recovering from prep, and I'd say I'm probably in a position to actually put on fat, more so than most people. Still, I think, like, I still don't think my hormones are back necessarily. I still don't think kind of thyroid's functioning particularly well. Sorry. So I will be doing like Rowan said, but I'll be kind of protein fasting for the kind of 2 days before Christmas. So kind of Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve, which is basically where I kind of keep carbohydrates and fats to a minimum, make sure I hit my protein, if anything, bump it up a little bit, just so I can shave off some calories for Christmas Day, because I know I don't want to be kind of restricting myself too much on Christmas Day. Like I said, I don't go super crazy anyway, because I'm quite disciplined in that aspect with food. but I will enjoy kind of some mince pies. Do you know what I mean? A pudding potentially, because I would never have that ordinarily, just because I'm a psycho. So that's how I'd personally approach it. But again, like it completely depends on the psychology of the client. Because some people will enjoy, I didn't say it, enjoy is the wrong word. Some people will benefit from restriction around Christmas. For example, if there is one client who, if you give them complete freedom, will overconsume calories like to another level, but by you saying, we want to try and stay around this calorie mark, you then kind of damage limit their calorie consumption without taking away from the enjoyment of Christmas. There's obviously some benefit in kind of both approaches, because I know some will be saying like do what you want, others I'll be saying like let's be mindful. Like if you know you're going to have a big kind of Christmas lunch and dinner, do you need to be having like 5 bagels with smoked salmon and eggs for breakfast? Like you probably don't. Like you could make like adult food choices. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I find that like at Christmas, like people just become big kids. Like, oh my god, I can just eat. And it's like you could have eaten all of this food like pretty much all year round, but now that it's at Christmas, sorry.
One of my favorite sayings is "Don't eat like an arsehole."
Yeah.
Just because you're able to doesn't mean that you need to. Like leading into the day, I think as well, everyone looks at them just because it's Christmas, air quotes, you suddenly change your entire routine.
100%.
Some people may benefit from having potentially a slightly smaller, but a standardized breakfast, maybe a small snack before the Christmas lunch, and then again, have something planned that's smaller later on in the day that's potentially more just kind of protein, less carb, fat heavy, where then you're going into this dinner not starving, and you may not have the same desire to eat as much as possible. Another strategy could just be, okay, you have your one plate, put what you're going to eat on that, and then outside of that, you're not allowed to eat anything else. At least then there's only so much you can really try and fit on one plate without it being ridiculous.
And we're not just piling it. We're not just piling it up. Yeah. Because that's like, you're not trying to beat the plate rule. Like you're just the plate rule is kind of a mindful eating trick that kind of
the plate's just gonna break if you load it too much. Like
don't test me. I've got strong plates, bro. Yeah, I think like again, it's like it's a tough one for a coach because you don't want to be like, don't eat on Christmas, but then at the same time, you're like, you're paying me to get you to that goal. And Christmas could significantly extend you reaching that goal, especially if the goal's fat loss. If the goal's muscle gain, like enjoy yourself. And again, just don't eat like an idiot. Like, because there is potential for the Christmas period to like ruin your runway of a gaining phase. Because like, I've known friends that have kind of treated the festive period as just a turbo bolt period. And it's okay if like you're not that big to start with, but like if you start gaining like 4, 5, 6 kilograms over Christmas, like New Year's going to be like a question mark. Like what are you going to do in that new year? Because realistically, what can you actually do as a recomposition phase? Like I question a lot whether people can actually recomp. I question a lot whether people can actually make much musculature progress during a recomp. So from there, like, does it make sense to kind of be putting on 6, 7, 8 kilograms? Like, of course, not all of that's fat. Like, a lot of that will just be kind of glycogen, saturation, electrolytes, salt, water. But some of it will be fat because some people do put away a lot of food at Christmas because the social kind of dimension that it's Christmas, it won't hurt. Like it's just once a year. Like I think that's one of the worst things that people can say. It's like, it only happens once a year. But if it happens once a year and you never really recover from that one time per year, it then becomes like a really, because most people don't lose the weight they gain at Christmas. I know. Have you got something to say on that?
No. Yeah. So at least going back to the previous point, with all of the social occasions as well, one of the other big factors that I don't think people were as aware about is the amount of kind of alcohol they'll start drinking across that period. Because like, okay, I'm gonna go out for drinks with this friend and then drinks for that friend. This is going to be a bit of a horrible thing to say, so put your fingers in your ears if you don't want to hear this fact. Alcohol metabolism is prioritized by the body over carbs and fats.
Yeah, buddy.
Which kind of means when you consume alcohol, your body wants to clear that first.
Because it's a toxin.
It will then stop. Yeah, it will then stop metabolizing to an extent carbs and fats, which would then lead to fat gain.
Storage.
So everything you're drinking, you're then like, oh, I want that, I don't know, 17 mince pies you're going to have afterwards. Probably not the best idea. And if you're doing that maybe twice in a day, 7 days in a row, it is going to lead to a much greater amount of
weeks in a row as well.
In.
Exactly, because Christmas, like festivities have started now, haven't they? Like Christmas markets are open now and it's November. So a lot of people, my friends including, which is fine, like they don't care, they're not into fitness, but they're drinking, they're eating more than they would ever because they're out, they're seeing people come home. A lot of people move home, or not move home, go home for Christmas. So you kind of have reunions with friends. I don't have friends, so easy for me.
Well, I'm over in Loughborough.
Think I'm joking, but I'm genuinely not. Get the violins up. Yeah, I think that is a very good point because people kind of like, it's very cool or it's very current for trainers to say, oh, you can still drink alcohol and lose weight. Like, it's not that simple. We wish it was, but it's not. Yes, numbers matter. So if you're factoring in alcohol, which I think you should be doing over Christmas, because otherwise, again, 7 calories per gram of alcohol, if you're having a lot of units of alcohol across multiple days, you're adding calories that you might not even notice. Well, you won't notice because you'll be drinking them. And it's just kind of, a lot of things are stacked in the favor of weight gain. So if you're prepping, I salute you. I have no one prepping at the moment over winter, thank goodness. So I think you need to be very smart with how you approach it, and don't just kind of throw caution to the wind and say like, oh, I'm just gonna, it's once a year. I think that's the worst mindset you can have, because then you kind of legitimize like really overindulgence, which I don't think
that was the point.
Sorry.
So that's the point you kind of brought up earlier that you asked me about, was a lot of the weight gain. So there was a paper that found that per year, the average person increases their body weight by 0.5 to 2 kilos, which may not be a huge increase or a huge calorie surplus per day. However, most of that surplus probably doesn't happen across every single day. I think it equates to about a 20 calorie increase per day. But all of that doesn't happen at once. It's typically during periods like Christmas or I don't know, Easter, wherever there's more like chocolate, food, etc. And if you stay, obviously, I'm never going to say starve yourself, don't have fun. But if you let the wheels just come off and you eat everything you want and you do gain 6-7 kilos in 3 days, that will probably, unless you're very dedicated to getting that weight off, which will be hard, you're probably going to end the following year heavier, potentially slightly worse composition wise, had you not binged as heavily at that holiday.
Like I said, like, people can do what they want, like, but I know for a fact I'll be inundated with client applications in January from people who have overindulged and now feel they've stepped on the scale come 1st, 2nd of January, gained 4 or 5 kilograms, and they think, shit, like, I'm in my 20s, I've gained 4 kilograms over Christmas, I don't know what to do. And the chances are, like, if you're listening to this podcast, like, you already are in a better position than most people. You're educating yourself around nutrition, training, and your thought processes will probably be much more aligned with what you actually want to achieve from fitness and training, that they will then filter into your decision making, which is a good thing. Do you have any kind of hacks for Christmas, mate? I know we've talked about I've spoken about like protein fasting. We've talked about borrowing calories. I think the main thing we haven't spoken about is like don't just become a slug like over Christmas. Like if you're working a 9 to 5
Yes.
at the moment and you get time off over the Christmas, don't just let your activity just plummet from like 14,000 steps because you commute in London to 2,000. That might be okay for like one day. Like everyone needs a Harry Potter sofa day, like over Christmas. Like I don't care who you are, like everyone needs one. But I generally recommend keeping activity somewhat high. So how I would approach that is like instead of just going to the pub for a social occasion, like arrange a walk before with the people, and then go to the pub, like, or then go out for that meal. Like it's just little things like that that will keep your general activity up higher. That you might not think it'll make that much difference, but it will. If you're doing 15,000 steps on Christmas Day, and you compare that to if you did 2,000 steps on Christmas Day, you've got way more calories to kind of what's the word use. I don't want to say use because we're not doing activity to be able to eat more, but it will give you a bit of a buffer, especially if you're
Well,
like or normally quite active, because I see a lot of like very active people become very inactive over Christmas and they wonder why they've had this kind of adaptive response from their body where calories are higher than usual, activity is lower than usual, and they come out and they think, oh, I'm a bit fluffier than usual.
well, definitely. Like obviously, a lot of the kind of equation for energy expenditure is based off of your NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically steps and fidgeting. If you sit on a sofa continuously, that's going to bottom that out massively. If you're able to maintain steps throughout the day, you're kind of you can see it one of two ways. You're either lessening the amount that you're eating, or you kind of give yourself that little bit of a blanket where it is okay if you eat a little bit more than you would have done normally.
Exactly.
Plus, by going out for small, kind of, even if it's 10, 15-minute walks, anything that mildly elevates your heart rates above kind of like a baseline, it will help with not only digestion of that meal, it will help with like blood glucose control, because it's very easy to massively spike it with loads of chocolate and then it'll plummet down. If you're slightly exercising afterwards, it shouldn't have as much of a negative effect. One tool you can use if you didn't want to have structured eating throughout the day is intermittent fast.
Yeah.
If you're saying, okay, I'm not going to eat until Christmas dinner, and then
that's my
I'll maybe
that's
have a
my
light.
that's my like preferred approach. I'll potentially put in a protein feeding this time around just because there is some research that kind of you are very catabolic during kind of fasting. So I would like to be spiking MPS. But that's pretty. I think every like I said, like you don't need to be having like massive breakfast, massive dinner, massive pre-dinner, after the dinner with a sandwich in between. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it just gets it's just not. I don't understand it. We've been kind of cultivated to just consume at Christmas, like consume advertising, consume presents, consume food, consume alcohol. And I understand that it's like everyone's together, like it's a happy time, but like I don't think overconsumption of things makes things happier. I don't know if that's just me being a Scrooge, but I think like it does just come boil down to like being sensible with things, and like intermittent fasting would be a good one and an easy one for most people to do, as long as you're getting kind of decent protein servings across the day, which you probably will on Christmas Day because there's just meat everywhere, isn't there? just a house of
One
meat.
other little trick I will actually say, albeit I don't know how reliable this will be. When I was doing my undergrad at Bath, one of the papers that came out of the department actually looked into the effects of overeating across a few day period, supplemented with HIIT, so high intensity interval cardio, alongside the days, or potentially, let's say, alongside 3 of the 5 days of overeating. While you can't fully out train or outrun a bad diet, massive amounts of overeating, they did see that you can massively reduce the damage caused by it. So yeah, I'm not going to say go out and run sprints on Christmas Day, but if you're able to potentially day before, day after, put in a little bit of the dreaded cardio word, you may also be able to slightly lesser the effects of the overeating that you may have done kind of the day before or days around that period.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like, again, it's a tricky one because like, are we creating a poor relationship with food if we're thinking about trying to like
True.
manage damage limitation against food? And like, it's a tricky one because like, I know how important that is, but it boils down again to like, what do you want to achieve? Like, you can fluff around the topic as much as you want. But like, if the goal is to kind of maintain body weight and continue to grow muscle or continue to lose fat over the Christmas period, it needs to be managed, or it will become that hurdle that happens to most people where you just kind of gain weight and then you never look at fitness again. Or it's 2 months before summer and you think, shit, I'm not in shape. So like, what am I going to do? And as we know, like, progress is made like months and months away from the due date. So if the goal is something in the middle of next year, like if you're working towards that now, you're already ahead of like 99.999% of people. So credit to you. What have we spoken about? We've spoken about training around Christmas, basically do what you want. Nutrition around Christmas, some actionable kind of strategies, fasting, protein fasting, keeping activity high, being an adult with your food, calorie borrowing or calorie buffers, whatever you want to call it. I think that's the main points I wanted to say around this festive period. But like, lastly, I just want to say, like, enjoy it. Just it is what it is. Like, don't spend your time. I think for a lot of people, if you have anxiety around Christmas and food and gaining weight, make a decision about what you're going to do. Clarity on a decision will make it a lot easier for you to stick by what you want to do. If you want to have a calorie goal, speak to a coach, or if you're on your own, set that calorie goal now so you know what it's going to be. And then when Christmas or the Christmas week comes, you have absolute clarity on what you're doing. I think for a lot of people, anxiety, or air quote anxiety, is produced by not having a clear plan. And if you don't have a clear plan, you're making it up as you go along, which never normally ends well for most people. So have a plan, get some clarity on what you want to do. And of course, like, do whatever you want to do. Like, we've spoken about a few topics here. Like, if you want to eat. Like, we're not going to judge you. No one has a right to judge you. Do whatever you want. We're just advising on those people who want to continue with their fitness progress over the Christmas period, and how we'll be supporting our clients to do that. So we'll be checking in with Rowan obviously next week and before the Christmas period. So it's not goodbye and Merry Christmas to Rowan yet. But thanks for coming on, mate.
Definitely not. No, my pleasure.
This should be uploaded and then we'll get another one uploaded next week. So pleasure speaking to you. Thanks for listening. And if you are new around here, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. It would mean a lot. And if you're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, don't forget to follow, so you get kind of updates when we upload new podcasts. I've got a few guests coming up, some big names in the fitness industry. I might get a professional rugby player on. I'm just working out how I would quiz him about nutrition and training, because I probably know more than him. So yeah, basically just follow along for the journey. Thanks for listening, and you will hear from us very, very soon.
Awesome. Peace out.